edition of the Draft Academy podcast. Brandon Kravitz here, along with World Series MVP, two-time All-Star out of the great city of Sanford. David Eckstein is on the pod. David, this is so cool. This is our first on-location Draft Academy podcast, so you're sort of our guinea pig here. The facilities are phenomenal. We had to get out here, and you're the perfect person to talk to here.
Oh, my gosh, so excited. You know, when Bert reached out and said, would I be able to do the podcast, I was like, yes. And then he asked, do it in person. And that's the best way to do podcasts. So you have a little bit of a live stream. And, yeah, being the first one, thank you for having me, Brandon.
Absolutely. Yeah. And getting to know each other a little bit before we record. Yeah. Usually it's, hey, send a link. Let's just go ahead and hit this. But it was, learning about what you've been doing recently and all the work that your wife does with Disney is phenomenal. So I guess before we get rolling here, you want to give her a shout out for all the great work that she's been doing?
You know, my wife is Ashley Eckstein. She's the voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars, Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, and Rise of Skywalker. Like almost anything you ever seen of animation is her. And so, but before when she got the role, she decided to do female sci-fi apparel because no one was doing it. So we started a company called Her Universe, built that up, sold it to Hot Topic. So now she's a consultant for Her Universe. She designs under her own name, Ashley Eckstein, for Disney. She is we just reached a new deal with Disney. She'll be co-creator, lead, executive producer, and lead voice for a brand new project that's coming out in 2026. It'll be the first ever Disney audio drama. So yeah, she has her hands full, and I just carry her bags right now.
Wow, that's incredible. You guys have to be the only couple in America that has a World Series MVP and a voice of a Star Wars character within the same household. Do you realize how unique this is?
Oh, it is unique. And then a little fun fact as well. At one point in time, because the director loved Kobe Bryant, there's a droid called K2B4, and my wife got to voice that too. So yeah, I don't know how many people can add that one as well. So
that is incredible. How cool is it to have something like this, where we're at right now at the Draft Academy, in your backyard for athletes that are in the area?
This is just amazing, and I knew Bert's idea and his vision and stuff, and it's the total care. You know what I mean? It's one thing to go to a place and work out and everything and try to get bigger, stronger, faster. It's another to have all that and then have the recovery. And the recovery is so important in today's time, in today's game. You sit there, this is something that I wish I had when I was growing up because you just didn't know. And all of a sudden you have these nagging injuries and you just try to play through them. And now with Bert's expertise and the whole Draft Academy's expertise, they have you on nutrition, they have you on recovery, and they provide the best strength and conditioning for each individual sport that you're trying to obtain greatness in, and that's what they do.
We've spent so much of our time on this podcast so far in its infancy talking about football. We've been talking to football players, and it's cool to bring on someone with a rich history and a lot of success in the baseball world. What are some of if you were to bring in a local player that just wants to get better at the training aspect, and you can also answer on the recovery side too because it's so important, where would you start? What would be some of the workouts that you would say, okay, we need to get functional in these areas?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing I see, especially at the younger ages, is footwork. How do you get better skilled in quickness and agilities and that focus? Because anyone can come in here and okay, we're going to pump some iron, we're going to get bigger in that way. But it's actually those little core muscles that actually help you fire and become more athletic on the baseball field. That's the key thing that I look at when I see a young player is, you look at their feet, you look at their foot speed, and you look at their hand-eye coordination. That's the stuff that, they totally focus here. And, Bert's expert at teaching people how to run. I've already sent him a couple guys, and their times, I would say their in-game times. Anyone can run a 60. But can you run it after you hit a ball and you run down to first base? Now you're running a 4-1 instead of a 4-4, and then the explosion to be able to cut the edges of the bases, and that's something that Bert really focuses on. And so that's the biggest thing I would say within what Bert teaches is the true technique to help your body function in a more better way.
What is the difference in terms of the get-off speed in you just hit the ball, you're processing where it's going, you're dropping the bat, and now you're running? That's not how most of us start running, even if you are working out. So what is the difference as far as technique, mentality, or all of that?
Well, it's definitely you want to be able to just not have to think about it, that it's pure natural, and the natural ability to get to full speed as quick as possible. I don't know if you start watching any of these baseball games, they measure this now, and they have in-game. You can go on like Baseball Savant, you can see how fast everyone runs and what's their top speed, okay, during any major league game. And so it's the ability to get to top speed as soon as possible, and especially like once you hit the ball, and it's the correct angles, especially if it's more than just a single, if you're trying to get a double or anything like that. But the bigger issue is when you're on the bases trying to steal. So everyone, like you see a lot of players, when they're trying to get that initial reaction, because either the pitcher's going to pick you off or you're going to try to steal second base. So you got to be able to go either way as fast as possible. And the biggest thing is not to have like the false step when you go to take second base. So that is one of the things. It's really key to watching the footwork, and where it can really help out the ability to be able to pick it up, put it back down, and get to max speed by within the third step.
And that's where the mind has to be married to the feet, because it's hard to think. You can't be thinking about that in the moment. It has to be natural.
It definitely has to be natural, and the fact that you could be picked off and you have to go in the complete opposite direction at the same time. So yeah, you definitely have to be in tune.
Baseball has become such a science. I overheard you talking about launch angles with Bert right before we recorded, and I'm like, my God, I grew up playing baseball, and I don't remember these ever being conversations. It was fundamentals were important, but it feels like geometry has found its way into baseball. Is that sort of weird for you? Because I'm sure you didn't grow up with that either. It was bat to ball, glove, ball in glove.
Yeah.
Get the glove down on the floor.
I'll give you a crazy concept. Like you hit the ball, you catch the ball, and you throw the ball, and whoever has the most runs at the end of the game wins. Wow. Like that game is not there anymore.
All right, shut down the podcast. We're done.
It's now like, oh my gosh, what is your launch angle? What's your exit velocity? What's your vertical break on your breaking ball? Like, what's your spin rate? You're hearing all this stuff.
But once you get the toothpaste out of the tube, there's no putting it back. So it's like this now.
It is like this now with the way these kids are learning the game. But we were talking this before. I just had the opportunity to coach the 18 and under national team once again. My brother was the manager. I was one of the assistant coaches. So we had the best 84 players in the nation. Okay, and now we had to figure out who were the best 20 that can actually win. You know what I mean? Because they all had the skill set. They all had the exit velocity. They all had the launch angle. They all had the velocity. But who could actually execute that when there was pressure on them to be able to have their talents portray in a way that we could win gold? And that's a different conversation than who's actually the best player out there.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would say to these kids within all this analytics stuff. The funny thing about it is, like, pitching has gotten better with analytics. So the understanding of how to grip a baseball, how to throw a ball, what grip best produces the best spin rate that actually, deceives the hitter even more, that has helped. But on the other side of things, the offensive side, as we've entered technology onto the offensive side, our offensive numbers have gotten drastically worse. Because now hitting was always used to be a thing where you didn't want to think. You just reacted, what we were talking about before. Because you throw the ball, I got to find a way to get the barrel of the bat on the ball. And now kids are thinking about, okay, how does my elbow go into the slot with my scapula to be able to hip hinge with my hip hinge, which there's 3 different hip hinge throughout the swing. All right,
to coordinate
to try to get my bat on the same plane of the pitch that I don't even know what's coming and how the ball's going to move, to hit it at that right launch angle between 20 and 35 degrees, so that I can produce a home run. But wait a minute, I'm not even strong enough to hit a home run, so I produce a fly ball out. All right, but in time, hopefully it will work. And so that's where we're at right now within our game, as opposed to. There was a gentleman in here today, and he had a son, and he's at the T-ball. I just let him swing, let him play, because your body articulates in a certain direction. So to sit there and try to retrain a body to not do what it naturally wants to do, especially in our game, it's usually detrimental to the kid. And I always like to say, I really don't like to touch kids on the baseball side of things till they go through puberty, because they truly don't understand their bodies well enough, and you could be doing you could actually hurt the kid so much more and limit his ceiling to where he actually be, because you actually teach him all the stuff that he shouldn't be doing. So anytime I work with a young kid and anything like that, I go, show me your youngest swing. Because if you get a kid, when he just picks up the bat and he has no idea what he's doing, that's the way his body wants to move. And that's what I try to go mirror once I work with the kid.
And that's why we have hundreds of professional baseball players, and almost all of them swing the bat differently.
Yeah. Have you not figured that out? But we have a minor league system that tries to teach everyone to swing the exact same way.
And you do see that more now than, you know, those unique, I think about all the guys, the Gary Sheffields of the world, the Julio Francos.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you would never be taught to do that now.
You wouldn't be
They would
allowed.
kick you out of Little League.
You wouldn't be allowed. The funny thing about it right now, like the way my swing worked, I slid my back foot behind me. And you can't do that. And I had one of the best hitting coaches in the game at the time tell me I couldn't do that. And I'm like, that's the way my body moves. I can't keep my foot in the hole. Like my back foot does not stay in the ground. My back leg kicks up at contact. It's off the ground, and it slides behind me. All of a sudden, Jose Tuve does it. And now we have a trend that a lot of kids now are trying to do that. And I'm not telling you to do that, because if your body doesn't articulate in that direction, it's not good for you. But now it's allowed to do it. But back then, like, because I was just with Brad Penny, you know, World Series champ, big-time pitcher throughout the Major League career. I think he had, 14 years in the big leagues. And he was a pitcher, but that's the way he hit. Yeah. His back foot slid behind him, and they always try to change him. And now he's like, you're telling me that's good? I'm like, yes, it was good for your body.
Man, I needed to hear this when I was 12 years old. I was a pretty good hitter. I went and I was like, I want to get better, you know? Right mentality, wrong action, because the worst thing that ever happened to me was getting batting lessons, because it changed my swing, and I wasn't as good of a hitter from that point moving forward until my baseball career, which, you know, didn't rise to the level of David Eckstein, eventually sort of flamed out. When did you know, though, that you had what it took to be a professional? At what point did that click for you in your journey? Because it wasn't always obvious.
Right. Yeah. So my dream always was to be a major leaguer, and so that was definitely what my mission was. And then coming out of high school, not having a college scholarship, I knew because of my size, I had to go play somewhere that people were going to go, oh my gosh, no, he's playing against the best competition, so he is good. And it was always my dream to go to University of Florida. So having the ability to go there, walking on there, and doing what I did there.
Did you have other offers, or were you just so tunnel visioned on Florida?
I was tunnel visioned on D1. And so Stetson reached out my junior year, but then told my coach my senior year that I was not big enough to play in Division I baseball. So after the whole fact, this is probably May of my senior year. The local community college coach called up my dad. My brother was playing there, and he was their third baseman. And he called up. He goes, "No, we'll let David come out, but we're going to move Rick to second, and we'll have because I was only a second baseman at that time. We will have Rick and David compete against each other." And it was on that moment, on that phone call, my dad was like, "No, I'm sorry, Coach. My son's going to Florida." And that's when it was made. And I had not even applied to Florida. I hadn't done anything to get into Florida. And so, so that was when the decision was made that I was going to Florida. And so, so went up there, did what I did. I would say, to get back to your question, like, when did I truly know? Because that is the question, like, are you a big leaguer? When are you going to be a big leaguer? You know what I mean? Because that's the big thing off in the distance. I was in AAA after I got done playing my AAA season. My brother, during that year, got the opportunity to bullpen catch for the Minnesota Twins. So he saw Derek Jeter, he saw Guzman, he saw Tejada, all the best shortstops. And you got to remember, I was playing second base at the time. So I was training with another guy who played at Florida and went on to have 12 years in the majors, Mark Ellis. And he came back and he goes, "Both of you are major league shortstops." And I hadn't played shortstop. And when my brother said that, I knew I was a big leaguer right then. And so, because sometimes I trusted him so much. And the craziness about it was I make the club the following year as second base because of the second baseman season, he broke his hand. And after he came back 10 days into the season, they switched me to shortstop. So I started playing shortstop again. But I fell back on what my brother said.
So when that started to click for you and you said, okay, if he believes it, I believe it, did your training change at that point? Did you take it more seriously, or were you already maxed out as far as how serious you could be?
Oh, my gosh. Oh, no. If anyone knows me, I was dead serious. And the thing about it was I was taking ground balls at shortstop my whole professional offseason. So as soon as I was drafted with the Red Sox, every offseason my brother made me take ground balls at shortstop just in case, because it's so hard to just be a straight-up second baseman and make it in the big leagues. Because if you can't play the left side of the infield, you better be able to be a real slugger to just go at second. So I was always taking ground balls at shortstop in the offseason, because that was my brother's vision that for me to actually truly make it into the big leagues.
Who did you emulate growing up? Because we all did. You can't play baseball at any level without trying to mimic somebody's play, whether it's fielding or hitting.
Yeah, this is kind of, my favorite player of all time was Dale Murphy. Kind of the opposite of me. Dale Murphy, 6'4", center fielder, hit homers all the time. He was my favorite player. So, yeah, I definitely mimicked his swing, just in the backyard, not in my swing when I played.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he was totally my favorite player. But growing up at that time as well, Pete Rose was a guy, the way he went about the game, how hard he played, and his style of game, I kind of replicate that on the field, like always running. That was the one thing. That was probably the best advice my father ever gave me was, in order to show out on the field, you got to be different. And the way you're going to be different is you're going to run everywhere. So when you go out to your position, you run. When you come back in from your position, you run. When you get walked as a batter, you run to first base. You're always running because you want everyone there to know that's the only place you want to be. And so that's what I did. So I ran everywhere I went. And that was kind of like Pete Rose.
Yeah.
And my little Pete Rose story was in 2002 in the World Series, the 0-2 World Series. I was with the Angels. We were playing the Giants, and they were going to honor the 10 greatest players of all time that was still living. And for that one day, they allowed Pete Rose back into the stadium. And so they honored him and stuff like this. So I went out to stretch, and he's waiting in the dugout. They come out and get me. He goes, he won't leave the field till he says hello to me, because I reminded him of the way he played.
So
amazing. So that was a pretty cool moment for me.
You carry that with you for the rest of your life.
We're all about optimizing performance here at the Draft Academy, and in order to optimize, it's not just about the work you put in, it's also about what you put into your body. Thorne is a supplement brand that believes in personalized scientific wellness. Create happier and healthier lives with Thorne at every stage of life. Visit thorne.com/u/Draft Academy when you sign up. That's thorne.com/U/Draft Academy. Enter that URL and you'll automatically get 15% off of all of your orders. Get your supply today.
I've heard in other interviews that you've done, you've given your father a lot of credit for instilling your work ethic and your mindset. Could you expand on that as far as what he taught you and how that changed the way that you approach not just the game of baseball but life?
Yeah, no, my father, without him, there's no chance I would have ever had an opportunity to play in the big leagues, because of what you were just saying. The way he instilled family into me and putting others first. So, and then also the work ethic and the discipline. My dad never came and watched me play until I was about a junior in high school. So after the game was over, when I was in Little League, I would have to come and sit on the fireplace and tell him everything that happened during the game. Because my dad did not want to be one of those dads that are yelling at the umpire.
So he was afraid of, that's why he didn't go. He was afraid of his own passion for watching his kid play.
And he expected us to be the best at what we did. And he could not really handle us not being the best. And so I would come home and I was like, yeah, Dad, 3 for 4 and everything. What out did you make? Why'd you do that? You need to be 4-4. So he always held me to a standard to always be better, and nothing was ever good enough, and to keep going. And that drive, and like I said back before, putting others first. So every time I stepped on the field, it was like, what could I do to help the club win? So if I could lay down a bunt, if I could hit a ball to second base and drives a run in. It was nothing about me personally. It was always about the club. And that type of mindset with the skill set I had actually really propelled who I was. Unfortunately, my dad had a stroke when I was in high school, and then he started coming to the games. Because he's like, man, I might be wasting some time. And so, but yeah, he helped me to stand. I called him after every major league game, and the same thing, like, well, why'd you do that? And stuff. And the funniest story would be, so 2006, we win the World Series. I was fortunate enough to be named World Series MVP. And so I get in the car, I'm driving home, and I can see the stadium, because you have to go up and around and pass back to the stadium for me to get home in St. Louis, and the stadium's right there, and my dad was like, congratulations, but I want to let you know 2006 is over. You need to start focusing on 2007. And the stadium was right there. But that's my dad, because he was always not letting me rest on my laurels and had to keep pursuing and try to be great.
And I'm sure that there's a level of comfort as you got older and the pressure mounts. Now you're a professional. People are watching you on TV. They get your name on the back of their jersey. You're winning MVPs, and it I'm sure keeps you focused on the task at hand, not letting you get too big-headed or get lost in the moment. And I'm sure that I could picture you sort of smiling on in the car as he's saying that.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely laughing. Well, the thing about it was through all this, and then I didn't even mention everything my brothers and sisters went through at a young age. They've all had kidney transplants, and seeing them not having even the opportunity to step on the field, me being able to even step on the field was a blessing. And that I loved the pressure. Oh my gosh, give me a stadium full of people, put me up there with the game on the line, fail or succeed, that's where I want to be. And it was all, because the funny thing about it was there's probably more pressure from my dad than any other person could ever put on me and stuff. But that was something that I just thrive for. And I say this, and people are like, oh, do you miss the game now? And no, I don't miss the game. I don't. I mean, I am done and everything like that. I go, but if the game was only postseason, I would still be playing.
Yeah.
All right. I don't want to go through another 162 regular game season, but you get me to postseason, I'll be ready to play.
That is, it's a grind. How tough is it to balance that mentality of, I think about it when you say you go 3-4, it's not good enough, and yeah, there was one at bat that didn't work out.
Right.
But that's baseball. It's impossible in this game. Ted Williams hit 344 at the plate, which means he's collecting it out far more often than he's getting a hit, and that's one of the greatest hitter of all time. So how do you balance that, knowing that that's the game that you play, but you also expect perfection out of yourself?
So what I would say to you, it was keeping me never to give in a bad away. And so that was more of it, as opposed to whether I got a hit or not. So the one thing I gave myself a lot of was grace on when I hit. So I would never truly get mad at myself over an at bat, because like we just said, it's the hardest thing to do in the game. You're going to be right back up there again, and you're not truly in complete control, because the pitcher is the one that has the ability to, change pitches, change speeds, do all that kind of stuff. And so as long as I did not give an at bat away, I was fine with whatever the result was. So that was the biggest thing that allowed me to never get too high or get too low when I was hitting.
I can see the joy in your face when you talk about those pressure moments and being in big game situations. You'd still be trying to go out there if you could play postseason baseball. So is the mentality different when you enter a game like that, or do you have to stay level-headed, even though the moment's bigger?
Well, you stay level-headed, but I would say it changes for everyone else around you, because the hardest thing about the 162 is in some people, winning really doesn't matter. It actually matters to get their numbers. And that's what the meteors are talking about. Oh my gosh, you're 0 for 14 right now. It's not like, oh, you guys just went 7-0, but you're 0 for 14. You know what I mean?
Yep. And
so the focus, once you get to postseason, is all on whether you win or lose the game. And that's what I love so much about it. And that's where, that's where we were talking about beginning. That's when the game is right back at its purest form, where we don't care about what anybody did, whether you won or you lost. And so in the regular season, you have to worry about other players doing stuff to get their number so they can get paid.
Right.
And winning is not always the top of their priorities. So that's I would say the biggest difference.
And I know that's part of the reason why you'll see bunts in the playoffs and you don't see it in the regular season. You don't get your numbers bunting.
Well, the funny thing about it is, it's like so in this new analytical world that we live in, and a lot of the teams, it's their religion now. They quantify a single almost the same as if you make an out, because they don't view you can get 3 hits in an inning, so its value is down. And an RBI has 0 value in the analytic world, and balls hit under 95 miles an hour mean nothing in the analytic world, because they can't predict a hit unless the ball's over that. And all of a sudden, we wonder why the shift works, why we have to make a rule that the shortstop or the second baseman they both have to play on their side of the field now.
Yeah.
And so, but we get to postseason, and as soon as that first guy gets a single, and now every run is so important, the fans are on their feet, you know what I mean? And then the pressure is really on. And no, we just got a guy on first base. Like, and in regular season, you don't even care. But in postseason, it does matter. And so that's why it's so funny in the sense of like what you were just talking about. Like, yeah, bunting becomes so important in the postseason. Getting singles, just getting guys on base, creating havoc, stealing a base. They made rules now that you can actually, it's easier to steal a base. But prior to that, if it wasn't more than a 90% success rate, like you would be frowned upon to steal, because and you're like, no, we're just trying to create action.
Right.
And so
that's why they made the bases bigger.
Why, yeah. So, and we're getting more of that now. And so, but like that's the stuff, like these fundamentals come back in once there's a championship on the line.
Yeah. Is there somebody in today's game that you love watching, or multiple? I'm sure there's more than one, but are there a couple of guys that come to mind that you just are in awe by in today's Major League game? Yeah,
of course. Like I like to say, like right now, like I'm fan. I'm more a fan of the game and of players because of certain things. Well, we had a little bit of. My brother was the minor league hitting coordinator for Luis Ariz. Back in 17.
Well.
Yeah, and so Luis, I go in there during instructional league. Rick grabs me. He goes, "Hey, David, I want you to introduce you to Luis. He's a big leaguer." You know what I mean? He told me that at the time. So having see him and do the exact opposite of what everyone else is doing, he has the weakest contacts in the major leagues, but his batting average is higher than anybody else. His on base percentage, his OPS, he's right there with the top. So watching someone like himself succeed like that is always fun. I've had the pleasure of meeting, Shohei, and so watching what Ohtani has done. I mean, I love all styles of game, and so watching what he has done. There's a player that's been hurt most of the year, and he just got traded to the Dodgers, Tommy Edmonds. So I got to, see him and talk to him some, and I like the way he plays. Just met me. I got to meet a pitcher. I was his favorite player, so they set it up a call with the Dodgers, Gavin Floyd.
That's so cool.
So a fan of him, but yeah. So I like all styles of games. I had the opportunity to be a special assistant within the Pittsburgh Pirates. So now these players have gone on to different places. So like a Starling Marte, Josh Bell, Jacob Stallings, Adam Frazier's. Yeah, I follow all of them and stuff like that. So my TV, I was very lucky. I let my wife do whatever she wanted with the house, but I do have 3 TVs on the wall, and I have a 4th one next to it. And usually on baseball night, there are at least 2, if not 3 games streaming at one time.
David, we sound a lot like one another. So we just sold our house. We're getting into a new one. We haven't made the move yet, but my wife's, she's on Pinterest constantly.
Oh, yeah.
And she's mapping out the house, and I'm thinking, she asks for my opinion, but it does feel like, just agree with what I'm throwing out there. I don't want to get in the way. My one request is the placement of the TV in the living room and the size of the TV. So I'm right there with you. I understand.
So important.
It is very important. Ohtani is amazing. Yeah. I mean, the fact that he is as good at hitting as he is at pitching, and we're not even seeing him pitch right now, yet he's having a career year at the plate, which is amazing in its own right. Do you think he goes back in terms of pitching on the mound, or is he achieving so much success you just kind of park yourself where you're at?
Well, he's going to do both. He is. He's going to do both. He actually threw his first bullpen, I think, the other day. So he's definitely going to try and make that comeback next year with the arm because he can still DH, with all those new rules. Now, it doesn't matter. He can DH the whole time. And so, but he wants to. That's the difference. It's like he wants to. He wants to be on the field. I remember when he first came to the Angels and when Joe Madden, when they took over, they were like, okay, he can only hit, 2 days prior to him pitching, then we'll give him 2 days off and stuff like this. But, when you have a thoroughbred like that, you keep him in the lineup. Because he just wants to go. The bigger concern of him hitting is, because that right arm is exposed, and that's the only thing. But I play him. Because he is your best pitcher and he is your best hitter.
That guy is special. Before I let you go, Little League World Series, Lake Mary. We got the champs right in our backyard. It's so cool. It's so much pressure on these kids. I think about that when I watch this, and they're on national TV. They're showing what's your favorite app? It's TikTok, and these are fifth graders. But I mean, how exciting for them to be on that stage. I'm sure you're proud to see that not only from a local level, but the fundamentals that they played with as well.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited and so proud of them. And just by random chance, I had a buddy call me up and goes, "Hey, can you go out and talk to Little League?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." So I showed up at Lake Mary Little League. There was rain and lightning, so they had to get everyone off the field. Well, that team was there, so they asked, "Oh, do you mind if we add them to the group?" So I spoke to all the boys before, and I knew all about last year where they came one game shy, and it was all about the redemption tour and everything like that. So so I was so excited to watch them. And you're talking about the thing about it is because I watched a lot of the Little League World Series and watching the other clubs, the Lake Mary club just looked like they had so much fun. You know what I mean? And they were handling the situations so much better than the other clubs, and you can just tell that by the bond. And Coach Anderson, has done a phenomenal job. And rumor on the street is that he holds them to a very high standard. And you saw it because what they did so well, you're talking about fundamentally, was the fact that you saw them take advantage of, especially on the base pass, when guys put their heads down. You know what I mean? Because he was always looking for their club, and they had the freedom to take that chance. They scored the go-ahead run against Texas in that fifth inning when the pitcher, they had timed it out perfectly. The pitcher turns around. If you look, the whole infield put their head down, and as soon as that catcher looked in for the sign, that's when the runner ran from third, and no one could see it. You know what I mean? It's planning like that for those situations. And once again, it came down to them executing a fundamental of a bunt that won them the title.
I know you were geeking out over that.
I was in a car. I was in Toronto, and I'm in a car, and I'm streaming it on my phone. And I'm like, they won! And I was so excited.
That's so cool. Well, I think my favorite part of all of it was after the game, the team, the Chinese Taipei team, they're falling to the ground, they're crying, just like any little leaguer would when losing a championship game. I'm sure that I've been in that position before. And Lake Mary's team stopped celebrating, then they go over and they hug their competition. You don't see that as adults. It's so refreshing to see. And
the thing about it was spontaneous. It wasn't like they were told. They naturally felt compassion for those boys on Chinese Taipei and went over and did it on their own. I mean, that just shows you what type of kids they are and how they've been coached and their parents and stuff like that. That sometimes they just did the impossible. First time in Florida State history that a team has won it, and they still in that moment had the time to go over there and console that other club. I mean, I was just so happy for them.
All right, let's wrap with this. If a kid is listening to this, maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum, they're playing Little League, their coach isn't playing them much, or they're having the slump of a lifetime, and maybe they're thinking to themselves, at baseball, maybe it just isn't for me. What would you tell that kid right now?
Well, first of all, it's not baseball without having to go through a slump. Like, everyone goes through it, and it's how you handle it. Because the biggest thing, and I'll go back to the Lake Mary Little League. that loss last year prepared them for this year. You know what I mean? So, like, when you get knocked down, you need to be knocked down. You need to feel that failure. When you feel that failure, that's when you find out who you are as a person. Can you dig down deep and work even harder to have the ability to go out there to try your best again? And I say this all the time. It's what you're doing when no one's watching you. So like, I actually said this to the Lake Mary Little League. I always wanted to be the person up with 2 outs in the 9th inning, bases loaded, down by a run, and strike out. And everyone looks at me like, why strike out? I go, because I knew I was the best person. I worked harder than anybody else, and I deserved the right to strike out because I was the best person for that position at that time. You know what I mean? And if you look at my numbers in postseason, that's how I handled the situation, because I put the work in, and when I put the work in, I was willing to handle whatever the result was. So that 0 for 14 slump that you're in right now, that where your coach is not playing you, what are you doing while your coach is not playing you? Are you sitting there playing the game in your head from the bench? Like, I would have done this, I would have done this. So when you get your opportunity, you're ready to go. So I just challenge them in that way and say, hey, this is a great game. If you truly want to be a part of it, there's a way to be a part of it, but it's on you to do the work by yourself.
2-time World Series champ, a World Series MVP. Not bad for a guy who was a walk-on at the University of Florida. Such a pleasure getting a chance to know you and chat with you today. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It was awesome.